So just kind of try and follow along as best you can. I would rather come here and tell you a little bit about a lot that's in the code than just come in here and go, gifts, 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 or whatever, pick a subject. So with that, I am here to answer your questions. I am happy to answer your questions. I have a request. My request is that you kindly hold your questions until the end. Let me tell you why, right? 98% of the time, your question, next slide, promise. If it's not the next slide, it's coming up. And if I shift gears to answer your question now, it's going to take a while to get back on track. And I want to give you time to stretch your legs before your lunch, okay? Now that having been said, if you simply can't go on until your question is answered, raise your hand, I'll deal with it, okay? With that, take a look at Article 3, Section 7 of our state constitution addressing ethical conduct. It says, the people of the state of Rhode Island believe that public officials and employees must adhere to the highest standards of ethical conduct, respect the public trust and the rights of all persons, be open, accountable, and responsive, avoid the appearance of impropriety, we'll talk more about that, and not use their position for private gain or advantage. That's what our Constitution asks of us. I don't think it's a lot to ask. Before we dig into the actual code of ethics for our state, I want to talk a little bit about ethical conduct in general, just to get us oriented to the topic. So ethics is a standard or philosophy of right or wrong human behavior based on logical reasoning. So ethical conduct is the type of behavior that a logical person would agree is just the right thing to do under the circumstances. But here's the thing. People have different ideas about what makes behavior right and wrong. What's right to one person might be wrong to another, and vice versa. So maybe you've heard the expression, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Some people view ethics based on culture. Many people think that whether something is ethical depends on the setting in which it occurs, taking into account the local culture, habits, customs. This is the way we've always done things in our towns. It must be ethical. Maybe, maybe not, right? Not the way that the ethics code measures ethical behavior, right? How about ethics based on consequences, where ethical or unethical conduct is determined by looking at the outcome? Ethical behavior produces more positive results than negative results in both quantity and quality. Maybe you've heard, well, the end justifies the means here. All's well that ends well. As long as we get the right answer, doesn't matter how we got here. No, no, no. That's not how we measure ethics at the Ethics Commission. How about character? Ethics based on character, where ethical conduct is determined by asking, what would a virtuous person do under these circumstances? The focus is on one's character, one's motives. I am a fine, upstanding citizen. How could I possibly violate something called the Code of Ethics? Guess what? Even character, not the standard by which ethical behavior is measured in our state. What is? We ask you to please focus on your action and forget the result, because the Code of Ethics tells us what actions to avoid, without regard to culture, without regard to consequence, even without regard to character. Pardon me. Ethical or unethical conduct is determined not by looking at the results, but by looking at the conduct itself and judging its inherent rightness or wrongness. A little bit about the makeup of the Rhode Island Ethics Commission before we hit the code. There are 9 members that sit on the State Ethics Commission. They are all appointed by the governor. The governor picks 4 people. The governor also seats the other 5 people, but does so from lists of 3 to 5 names that have been submitted by leaders from both the House and the Senate. And I'm happy to say that for the first time in several years, all 9 seats are filled at the Ethics Commission. We have 9 incredibly intelligent, articulate human beings sitting on the Ethics Commission. They are quite powerful. Look at how powerful. Advisory, investigative, adjudicative, and in some instances, removal powers. What might be of interest to you about people that serve on the Ethics Commission, They may not hold or campaign for public office. They may not hold office in any political party or in any political committee, nor may they participate in or even contribute to a political campaign, not so much as a sign on the front lawn of an ethics commissioner during election time, okay? So I am a member of the staff of the Ethics Commission. I work for them. Our executive director and chief prosecutor is a gentleman named Jason Grammett. Before Jason became our executive director in April of 2018, Jason had my job for 20 years. This guy knows this code up one side and down the other. Jason and I are 2 of 5 attorneys in our office. We have 3 investigators. They are all retired police officers and know their way around an investigation. We have a wonderful support staff. There are 12 of us that work at the Ethics Commission. We hang out at 40 Fountain Street in Providence, or by way of Rhode Island directions, we're next to the old Journal building, down the hill from the mall, next to the, I'll still call it the Biltmore, whatever we call it now. I still say Civic Center, so there is a slide at the end with our contact information, so you'll have it. Who is subject to this rule book, this code of ethics? A lot of people. All state and municipal elected officials subject to the code. All state and municipal appointed officials subject to the code, as are all employees of state and local government and members of public boards, commissions, and agencies. All right? Conflicts of interest, topic number 1 under the code, conflicts of interest and recusal. I start with this one. It's the big rule in the Code of Ethics. And quite frankly, conflicts of interest and nepotism, the bread and butter of the Rhode Island Ethics Commission, okay? There are other matters that we will talk about, but let's jump right into conflicts of interest. As a person subject to the Code of Ethics, you may not participate in any matter as part of your public duties if it is reasonably foreseeable. Well, what does that mean? Reasonably foreseeable means that something is more than conceivable and less than certain to occur. The conflict is more than conceivable, less than certain to occur. That's a lot of airspace, okay? If it is reasonably foreseeable that you, anybody in your family, your business associate, or a business by which you are employed or which you represent will derive a direct monetary gain or even suffer a direct monetary loss by reason of your participation in the matter. Now, people will say, I get the monetary gain part. You know, if I take part in this vote, it's going to put money in my pocket. But if I vote on this, I could lose money. That shouldn't be a conflict, right? Wrong. The ethics code makes no distinction between financial gain and financial loss. If you, a family member, a business associate, or a private business by which you are employed will be directly financially impacted by a decision that you're taking part in, you have a conflict of interest you have to recuse. You may not take part. All right? So the code talks about our business associates, so you really ought to have some idea of who your business associates are as far as the Code of Ethics is concerned. Well, let's look at some examples. Your business partners, if you have a private business, your business partners are your business associates. That's fairly obvious, right? People you have hired are your business associates. Think attorney, accountant, realtor, contractor. You get the idea. The Ethics Commission has determined that the landlord-tenant relationship, one of business associates. And this next one is really important, and people forget about it a lot. Any businesses or organizations, okay, including not-for-profits, if you are an officer or serve as a member of the board of directors, even if you don't get paid, you are a business associate, not only of the organization itself, but of the other officers and the other members of the board of directors. Okay? All right. Ongoing business associations. Our business associate relationships don't always last forever, right? People come and go throughout our lives. There are 3 questions that the Ethics Commission is going to ask when they're trying to determine whether or not you have a business associate relationship with someone and therefore a conflict of interest. They will ask, are the parties conducting ongoing business transactions between them? Are there outstanding accounts between the parties? Let's say the work has been performed, but one still owes the other money. And is there an anticipated future relationship between these parties? You don't need a yes to all three. A yes to any of these is going to indicate business associate relationship. So a couple of minutes ago, I used the term, I used realtor as an example. You have a realtor, that's your business associate, you have a conflict. Let's say you sold your house in 2019, and you used a realtor, and hopefully got more than you were asking, and you had the closing, all the funds have been distributed, you've been living happily ever after in your new home for 6 years with no plans to use that or any other realtor again. And that realtor comes before you in your public capacity. I don't know what that was. Oh, a sign. Okay. And that, all right, we know where we got, we know where we are. Okay. And that realtor comes before you in your public capacity as a school committee member, barring some other relationship under the code, like it's not your nephew as well, right? Probably not your business associate anymore. Your work is concluded. But if your house is for sale now, you used a realtor, let's say you got an offer, you accepted it, the closing's in 3 weeks, and that realtor comes before you in your public capacity, stop. You have a conflict of interest. That's your business associate. You must recuse. Okay? Family members. The code talks about your family members. You may not take action in your official capacity where it is reasonably foreseeable that your action will directly financially impact a family member. Who do we mean by family members? Under the Code of Ethics, whether by blood, marriage, or adoption, there's your list. Spouse, parents, children, siblings, grandparents and grandchildren, aunts and uncles, nieces and nephews, and your first cousins. That's who we mean by family members. So, somebody says, Lynn, I haven't spoken to my sister in 6 years. If she comes before me in my public capacity, no worries. I would no more go out of my way to help her than I would to hurt her. I'll treat her like I would anybody else. No conflict, I don't have to recuse, right? Wrong. A family member is a family member is a family member regardless of the status of your relationship at any given time. Same person might say, I'm a lot closer to my best friend than I ever was to my sister. If my best friend comes before me in my public capacity, do I need to recuse? How many say, yes, I do for my best friend? How many say, no, I don't for my best friend? How many say, I'm not here to answer questions, you are, just tell me the answer? That would be me at any event I've ever been to since grade school. Don't look at me, don't call on me. Just tell me what I need to know. So, technically, the Code of Ethics does not prohibit you from taking part in a matter that will impact a friend. Can you imagine the job of the Ethics Commission trying to assign a value to your friendship with somebody to determine whether it's conflict of interest territory? What would they say? Did you meet in kindergarten? Did you date in high school? Do you take each other's kids back and forth to rehearsals or practices? Do you text twice a minute, twice a decade? It's impossible. But remember that constitutionally founded goal where we are asked to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. If your friend comes before you in your public capacity, what an excellent opportunity for you to just exercise the discretion to say, you know what? This might look bad if I take part in this because this is my very close friend here. I'm going to choose to recuse. Do you have to? You do not. Should you? Depends who you ask. If you're asking me, why not? All right, sermon over for now. I said there's no test at the end. That is still the case. But if you leave here today with anything on your mind, okay, other than that clumsy girl dropping the sign, make it this. It is not unethical to have a conflict of interest. It does not violate the Code of Ethics to have a conflict of interest, said the woman with 31 first cousins. I kid you not. It's not the conflict that's the problem. The potential problem is the failure to identify and manage your conflict. We help people do that every single day at the Ethics Commission. So, do I have a conflict? Here's what you're going to ask yourself. Is it reasonably foreseeable, more than conceivable, less than certain, that a decision that I'm helping to make as part of my public duties will result in a financial benefit or detriment to me, someone in my family or household, to my business associate, to a business by which I'm employed, ask yourself, even if there's no financial impact, is a family member, a household member, a business associate, or a business by which I'm employed a party to or participant in the matter that's being discussed? If the answer is yes, you have a conflict of interest and you must recuse. Now, you might notice the term household member in this slide and in the last slide. That's because under the nepotism provisions of the Code of Ethics, which we're going to cover shortly, if someone lives in your home, that is conflict of interest territory for the nepotism provisions, regardless of whether you are related by blood, marriage, or adoption. The act of recusal is relatively simple. We ask you to fill out a statement of conflict of interest form, often called a recusal form. I bet the clerk has some. If not, you can download one from our website. Call us. We'll send you one. It's one page, super easy. You fill it out. You give it to your supervisor or appointing authority or clerk and decide between the two of you who's going to send us a copy. We do keep these at the Ethics Commission. And people are glad we do, because every once in a while someone will call to file a complaint against someone alleging that they participated in a matter that they shouldn't have, and we'll just look it up and say, no, they recused. We have the form right here. So that's that. Nepotism. This slide never ceases to make me smile. And if nepotism exists, my brothers will root it out, right? Irony. Love it. As someone who is subject to the Code of Ethics, you may not participate in any matter as part of your public duties if there is reason to believe or expect that any person within your family or a household member is a party or participant, or will receive a direct monetary gain, or suffer a direct monetary loss, or somehow obtain an employment advantage by reason of your participation. The Code's prohibitions against nepotism apply regardless of whether, for example, your family or household member is the most qualified candidate for that job, absolutely deserves the promotion. If it's going to happen, it's got to happen without you being involved, right? Because you have a conflict of interest. And the policy underlying the prohibitions against nepotism in the Code are based on the recognition that it's just really, really difficult for anybody to be truly objective when it comes to matters impacting their family or household members. Do we think you can do it? Maybe, probably. Not the point. We remove from you the obligation of having to defend yourself after taking part in a matter impacting a family member or a household member by just taking it off the table. And one more time, what do we want to avoid? The appearance of impropriety, right? Examples of nepotism, not an exhaustive list, but this will get you thinking about what nepotism is. Hiring someone in your family is nepotism. The awarding of a contract to someone in your family is nepotism, as is any decision regarding a family member's property. Appointing someone in your family or household to a compensated position is also nepotism, as is participating in any disciplinary matter in which a family or household member's employment is at risk. Okay? Still on nepotism, you may not participate in the supervision, evaluation, appointment, classification, promotion, transfer, or discipline of anybody in your family or household. Nor may you delegate any of those responsibilities to your subordinate. If you can't hire your nephew to be the paid summer intern in the office next summer, you can't ask your assistant to do it. It would be as though you've done it, okay? Very different than private entities, right? You own a flower shop, not subject to the Code of Ethics. A private person wants to hire their niece, their nephew, all their friends, and their sister-in-law, have at it. But public servants, different story. Nepotism, no. Okay, so the Code of Ethics allows the Ethics Commission to approve what's called an alternate chain of command in situations where nepotism could exist. Think legacy jobs like police departments, fire departments, jobs that call a lot of the same family members. Teaching as well, right? So here's the thing. If if the Ethics Commission is making a determination about an alternate chain of command, the person who's going to step in for the person that has the conflict of interest has to be of equal rank or higher than the person that has the conflict. And this alternate chain of command, meaning I'll sit it out, but somebody else is going to take care of it to deal with my conflict because, I don't know, my niece works here, that's got to be approved by the Ethics Commission in the form of a formal advisory opinion. We're getting to those very shortly. Recusal. So I've had people say, all right, I'm going to recuse. I have a conflict. Do I leave the table? Do I leave the room? Do I leave the building? What do I do? If it's an open meeting, we'd like you to leave the table because even if you sit there with your mouth closed and your hands folded, your presence at the table lends an appearance that you're participating. Can you leave the table and sit in the front row and watch? You can. Do I recommend that? No. If you recuse, leave the room and come back when it's over. Here's why. Let's say you recuse because you have a conflict and you say, I'm just going to go sit in the front row because I'm not going to take part. And while I'm sitting here, I'm going to text home and see if anybody needs anything at CVS. You're innocently texting. Anybody need anything at CVS? Someone who didn't recuse, who's still at the table, is going to get a text. And they're going to look at it. Let's say it says, Uncle Joe's in the hospital, but he's going to be fine. Call me when you get out. My phone is going to ring at 8:31 the next morning with somebody who says, I want to file a complaint. That person said they recused. They went right to the front row, immediately texted somebody at the table, and they were taking part. Not enough Tylenol in the world to keep me in a room where I've recused from participation. Do you have to leave the room? No. Give serious thought to leaving the room, just to keep it clean, okay? Once you've recused, you really have no more right to be there than any member of the public, right? So then you should leave, okay? Contracts, very briefly, no person subject to the Code of Ethics may enter into any contract with a state or municipal agency unless the contract has been awarded through an open and public process, including prior public notice and subsequent public disclosure of all proposals considered and contracts awarded. An example of this might be if a municipal employee works in the clerk's office and has a side hustle in the winter of plowing snow. And they have a truck, and they have a plow, and they go to whoever is responsible for hiring a vendor to plow snow in the winter and says, you don't even have to put an RFP out for this one or bids on it. I can handle this in my spare time. I know every road in the city. I can be here when you need me to. I'll give you a fair price. You can just hire me. That would be very wrong. Now, there may be an opportunity for that person to bid on it, and that would depend, and they would call us and we'd talk it through. They're all circumstances are very dependent on different things. But that's that. And there are some professional services that are customarily awarded without public bidding. Those don't require public bidding. But there still has to be awarded through a process of public notice and disclosure of all the financial details. And there's some examples of people that you don't have to put a bid out for that. Okay? Secondary employment, new topic. Sometimes called moonlighting back in the day, right? And there are a number of us that work for the state or municipalities that might want a second job. And so I want you to know a couple of things. If you are going to get secondary employment, and really pretty much your service on the school committees is not your main gig, and so, but think employees, like such as myself, if I wanted to get a part-time job on nights or weekends. I can't get a job that is going to directly, that is going to impair my independence of judgment with respect to my job at work, right? I also can't get a job that's going to require or induce me to disclose confidential information that I acquire during the course of and by reason of my work, all right? So let me tell you what the Ethics Commission looks at, because people will send in a request for an advisory opinion, and I promise you'll know what that is shortly, to find out whether they can take that second job on the side. The Ethics Commission is going to look at the nexus between that person's public duties and the other employment that they want to engage in, see how closely they're related. Any work that someone does in a second job has to be completed outside of their normal work hours without the use of public resources, okay? A public employee may not appear before their own agency. The work done has to be conducted outside of areas over which a public employee has decision-making jurisdiction, and the employee may not use their public position to solicit business or customers, okay? So part of my job at the Ethics Commission is drafting advisory opinions for people. So if somebody needed an advisory opinion before the Ethics Commission, they're not going to hire me on the side to argue their point for them. That would be a conflict of interest. Because even if I recused and didn't draft the advisory opinion, you know, that's part of my responsibility, right? Nor could I use my computer to, you know, to, let's say somebody hired me to, I don't know, bake a cake for them. I'm not going to give them my work email address and phone number or call them from work, that sort of thing. Okay. This should come as no surprise to anyone. You may not use, you may not disclose or use for financial gain confidential information that you acquire in the course of and by reason of your positions with the school committees, okay? Please keep confidential information, just that. And when I say you can't use or disclose for financial gain, I don't just mean for you. It's that core group of four again. You, someone in your family, your business associate, a business by which you're employed. Confidential is confidential. Gifts, probably the most popular topic at the Ethics Commission, the Code of Ethics, year-round, all right? Here's what I can tell you about gifts. As someone who is subject to the Code of Ethics, if you participate in making decisions, I know you do, you may not accept cash or forgiveness of debt from an interested person. What's an interested person? An interested person has a direct financial interest in a decision that you either make or you help to make. All right? And interested persons include employees or representatives of an individual, a business, an organization, or an entity. What can you accept? Under the Code of Ethics, you may accept things of value up to and including $25 per instance and $75 per year per interested person. So, some agencies, I know there's at least one or two state agencies, that have a zero tolerance policy on gifts. That's clean, no room for misunderstanding. Let's say your agency has a policy on gifts that's more strict than the $25. Let's say it's a $10 limit. If that's the case, you have to follow your agency's policy on gifts, receiving gifts. But let's say an agency says, yeah, we get it, Ethics Commission. You can't go around accepting expensive gifts from, interested persons, but $25, really? That's like a sandwich and a cup of coffee. We're going to make it $100. That's our gift rule. No. In that case, you follow the Ethics Commission rule. You follow the less fun one, okay? I am told that years ago, like 15, 20 years ago, that $25 limit was $150. And the $75 limit was $450. And I was kind of thinking about that, saying you'd think that as the years go on and the value of the dollar and the economy, that the amount would go up, right? Clearly, something had to be reeled in, okay? What was I going to say about this? Right? I know, my little story about when I did this presentation for another group, and a gentleman raised his hand at this point and said, do you mean to tell me that if somebody gives me tickets to a Bruins game because I helped them in my public capacity that I can't take them? And I said, that's exactly what I'm telling you. A+, very good, sir. And he's like, rah, 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 rah. I said, I have a question for you now. Anybody ever want to send you to a Bruins game before you had this position? This is why Jason Grammett, the executive director of the Ethics Commission, on Boss's Day, gets one card signed by 11 people with a Dunkin' card worth $20 in it. It's a sticky thing. And some people will say, that's kind of awkward if someone sends you a gift. What are you supposed to do with it? You say, I can't take it. Thank you very much. I can't take it. Or you can donate it to a charity immediately without taking a tax credit for doing so. All right? It can be awkward, but just have that policy. Just say, I can't, very nice of you. You enjoy it. Thanks for thinking of me, that sort of thing. Gifts. Transactions with subordinates. As someone who is subject to the Code of Ethics, you may not engage in a financial transaction. What do I mean by financial transaction? Private employment or consulting, giving or receiving loans, monetary or charitable contributions with an employee, contractor, or consultant over whom you exercise supervisory responsibilities. That would be your subordinate. So there are some exceptions. There are certain financial transactions in the normal course of a regular business or occupation. That would be okay. Another exception would be is if the subordinate is the one to initiate the transaction between you, right? And then there are certain charitable events that are sponsored by the highest official of a governing body or municipality, and that's why the governor can ask state employees to contribute to the United Way every year. That's an example of that. So for the second one, the subordinate initiating, let's say that somebody, let's say that the head of a state agency has someone that works for them, and the head of the agency goes to that person and says, hey, want to make a couple bucks on Saturday? I have a living room that needs painting. You can't do that. But let's say, for example, that the subordinate went to the boss and said, I'm available to, paint your living room on Saturday if you want me to, that sort of thing. There's a difference. That was just a broad example. So, okay. No person subject to the Code of Ethics shall solicit or request, directly or through a surrogate, political contributions from a subordinate over whom that person exercises official supervisory responsibilities, right? I tell people that the director in a state agency or a manager cannot come in one day and say, I've decided to run for state senate. I'm going to be the best senator this state has ever seen. I'd appreciate it. Anything you can do. No contribution is too big or too small. I'm going to leave the envelope here. Reviews are next week. P.S., right? You can't do that. Now, we all have this First Amendment right to contribute to the campaign of our choice, should we so choose. But you can't, the boss can't go around and ask. And I really get disturbed by the number of eyebrows that raise at certain times of the year when I say that. They're like, oh, they can't? No, they can't. The revolving door. There are a number of revolving door provisions in Rhode Island's Code of Ethics, and a lot of people just hate them. But I'm going to tell you why we have them. The purpose of the revolving door provisions: to prevent government employees and public officials from unfairly profiting from or otherwise trading upon the contacts, association, and special knowledge that they acquired during their tenure as public servants. Okay, it's usually a 1-year cooling off period per revolving door situation. Let's look at an example. One of the regulations is, no elected or appointed official may accept any appointment or election that requires approval by the body of which that official is or was a member to any position which carries with it financial benefit. And this prohibition continues for 1 year after the termination of that person's membership in or on such body. Now, the Ethics Commission can make an exception if satisfied that not allowing this little thing to happen will be a substantial hardship, not on the person that wants the job, but on the body trying to fill the position. Let's look at an example of a town council. There's a town council that has a lawyer on it, right? And then eventually the lawyer leaves the town council, not for any bad reason. Maybe they didn't run again, right? 6 months later, the town council is in a position to hire private counsel for a particular project. And somebody says, let's hire Connor. He's a lawyer. He sat on the town council. We know him. He knows us. He's familiar with the project. We talked about it in the past. Let's hire Connor. Can Connor take that job? No. Why? He's only been off the town council for 6 months. But let's say one of those hardship situations is at play, and the city council or the town council says to the ethics commission, of the 12,000 lawyers in Rhode Island, we can't find anybody. It's got to be Connor. Well, good luck with that. That's not going to happen, okay? So let's look at another sample of a revolving door provision. No municipal elected official or school committee member, whether elected or appointed, right? We covered you all, while holding office and for 1 year after leaving municipal office, shall seek or accept employment with any municipal agency in the municipality in which the official serves. There's an exception for employment that was held at the time of your election and maintained throughout. So let's say someone on the school committee is a nurse, and one of the schools in your city or town has an opening for a nurse. You may not apply for that position, right? You're a sitting school committee member. Let's say that you're on the school committee and there's a position open in the clerk's office, and you don't have anything going on during the day at this point in time, and you're like, hey, that sounds like it might be fun. Nope, can't do it, okay? Revolving door. Okay, as a person subject to the Code of Ethics, you may not represent yourself or anyone else before the agency of which you are a member, or by which you are employed, or for which you have the appointing authority. You may not serve as an expert witness before your own agency, and these prohibitions continue for 1 year after you leave your public position. So, what do I mean by representation? You may not represent yourself before your own agency. Representation is defined as the participation in the presentation of evidence or arguments for purposes of influencing the judgment of your agency in your favor or in favor of someone else. Okay? You know you're doing too many of these presentations when you don't have to look at the slides anymore. Okay. There is a hardship exception to this rule. And it says the Ethics Commission may grant a hardship exception, allowing you to represent yourself before your own agency or an agency over which you have appointing authority. To obtain a hardship, you must get an advisory opinion. We're getting to them, I promise. So here's an example. Someone is on a zoning board, and that person wants to put a shed in his backyard. He's in his backyard, he's figuring out where the shed's gonna go, he finds the perfect spot, and he says, oh, I'm gonna have a problem with the setback ordinance in town. I need to ask for variance so I can put a shed where a shed ought to be. I'll go to the Ethics Commission, I'll ask for one of those hardship exceptions. He goes to the Ethics Commission, and as the Ethics Commission has done at least 4 times in my 6 years with that agency, there are zoning board members putting up sheds all throughout our state. The Ethics Commission will go, okay, we're going to give you a hardship exception so you can put a shed in your backyard, but you're not going to vote on this matter, and you're going to let everyone at that meeting know you got this advisory opinion saying that you were given special permission to do so. Thank you very much, Ethics Commission. Guy goes on his way. Maybe he gets his shed, maybe he doesn't. The next year, the same guy buys a piece of property in the town in which he serves on the zoning board. And he says, this is a nice piece of property. I am going to develop it. I'm going to put a building on it. It's going to be a commercial building. I'm going to separate it, and I'm going to rent it out to different people, and I'm going to make a whole lot of dough. Got a couple of things to take care of first. First stop, the zoning board. I'm still on the zoning board. Oh, you know what? I got my shed last year because I went to the Ethics Commission for hardship. I'm going back. Hi, Ethics Commission, it's me, the zoning board guy. Shed's working out well. Could you not use another hardship exception, please? This time, it's because I bought some property in town, and I'm going to develop it and build a commercial building and rent it out, make a whole lot of dough. What do you say? What do you think the Ethics Commission is going to say? No. There is a big difference between wanting to go before your own agency to put something in the backyard to keep the grill and the kids' bikes dry in the winter and wanting to launch a brand new commercial venture. Nope, they are rarely filed by one's friends, I can tell you that. We're not going to go too deeply into that process. I have one slide on complaints. Here's what I'd like you to know. Anybody can file a complaint with the Ethics Commission against someone who is subject to the Code of Ethics. We sometimes get calls that say, I want to file a complaint against my veterinarian. I want to file a complaint against my realtor. I want to file a complaint against my doctor. They're unethical. And we feel bad for them, but we can say it's possible they're engaging in unethical behavior, but it's not covered by the Code of Ethics. What do you mean? You're the Ethics Commission. So once we send them on their way with a correct number, you should know that these complaints have to be filled out on a form that we provide, right? And they have to be signed under oath. Translation, we don't accept anonymous complaints. More on that in a minute. It's got to name the individual alleged to have violated the Code of Ethics. We call that person the respondent. It's got to identify the respondent's public office and detail the specific acts which you allege violated the Code of Ethics. Now, this is not public unless and until it's accepted by the executive director, and the complainant is not a party. The complainant gets the ball rolling, files the complaint, but the complainant is not a party to the action, right? So, someone might say, I'm not putting my name on a complaint to the Ethics Commission, there'll be retribution. Well, there's a little statute in this book that takes care of anyone that tries to do that, but some people are still not comfortable. So I will tell you this, the Ethics Commission also has the authority to initiate its own investigation into a particular matter. But, there has to be somewhat of a reason. We don't just go flipping rocks over looking for trouble where there isn't any. If you felt that strongly about a matter, you could call and speak with one of our investigators, tell them what your complaint would be, and if they speak with the director and they deem it advisable, they'll start their own investigation. The other thing is complaints before the Ethics Commission are civil in nature. They're not criminal in nature. The Ethics Commission doesn't put people in prison. That is not to say that someone facing a civil complaint before the Ethics Commission isn't in some hot water with the Attorney General's office or the U.S. Attorney's office for the same conduct. For us, it's civil. A question that I get often is, what's the penalty if I violate the Rhode Island Code of Ethics? And I will give you the lawyer answer stamped to my forehead. It depends, right? The Ethics Commission has the authority to fine someone up to $25,000 per violation. Have I seen that happen? No, in my 6 years. Has it happened? I'm told it has. Sometimes a violation of the Code of Ethics might be somebody didn't file their financial disclosure statement. We'll get to that too. That might be a $100 fine or a $300 fine if they're a frequent flyer, that sort of thing. Or if somebody took a vote on something and they benefited, they benefited to the tune of $5,000. Sounds like a reasonable fine to me, right? So it really does depend. So that's it on complaints. Advisory opinions that I keep talking about. This is the other half of my job and that of my colleague and friend Teodora Papa. Teddy and I draft 95% of the advisory opinions that leave our office. So we want you to know what they are, when you might need one, how to get one. Has anybody in this room, I think you're all brand new, so maybe not, has anybody filed for an advisory opinion with the Ethics Commission? Oh, okay, so you're aware of them. Let's talk about them. An advisory opinion is a legal interpretation of a piece of this code, all right? It is issued by the Ethics Commission. It provides specific guidance about a particular and impending circumstance, and it is based on the representations of the petitioner. The petitioner is you, the person who's asking for the advisory opinion. Your takeaways? The Ethics Commission does not issue advisory opinions on hypotheticals. Who's got the time? Right? And they do you no good. A hypothetical situation, having an advisory opinion on that will do you no good, okay? Because the advice you want is going to be fact dependent on your facts. Also, based on the representations, no one's going to investigate whether or not what you're telling us is the truth. If it's not, then the advisory opinion saying you can do something will be of no value to you. Anybody can request an advisory opinion if you are subject to the code, and it's got to be about a provision that directly affects you, all right? And the time to do this is before taking official action, okay? Better to ask permission today than forgiveness tomorrow. Plus, we don't issue advisory opinions on past conduct, prospective conduct only. If you want an advisory opinion, you mail, hand deliver, or email to us a letter with all this info. Please include your contact information. We're going to be chatting with you about this. Tell me what agency you're on, a little bit about your duties, summarize the potential conflict, tell me any facts you think are relevant. I'll get the rest of them out of you. And let me know if you have a time constraint, okay? The Ethics Commission usually meets twice a month, once a month in the summer, always on a Tuesday morning at 9. We want to get you in and out as best we can. It depends on your advisory opinion. It could take 2 weeks to write, it could take 2 months to write, but we want to get helping you as soon as we can. After you submit your request, you'll get a letter confirming we received it. You're going to get a draft recommendation prepared by a staff attorney. It says draft in big letters across every page. They're usually 3 or 4 pages. The reason it says draft, because it doesn't mean a thing what I recommend or what Teddy recommends unless and until a majority of the Ethics Commission votes to approve it. Right? You're strongly encouraged to attend a meeting if you've got an advisory opinion on. They might have a question for you. You might have a question for them. It's painless. Advisory opinions are done first. You'll be out before 10. And then if your advisory opinion is approved, a copy will go on our website after you get sent one. And you should know that both your advisory opinion, that's public anyway, because it's on our website, and your letter asking for it are considered public records under the Access to Public Records Act. So if someone calls our office and asks for a copy of the advisory opinion issued to Lynn, plus her letter asking for it, we'd have to turn that over, okay? Now, you might say, maybe I need an advisory opinion, maybe I don't. Maybe I look on the website for the Ethics Commission, and because we have all of our advisory opinions from the past 30 years, maybe I find one and see if that's addressed my very question. So you type some search terms into the bar, up pop a few advisory opinions, you read one and you go, that's my question. That's my exact question. I don't need an advisory opinion. I'm going to read this one, do exactly what they told this person to do, and I'll be fine. Please don't do that. The only person who can rely with absolute certainty on a particular advisory opinion is the person to whom it was issued. Read the one you found, get an idea of which way the wind is probably going to be blowing for your advisory opinion. You might see me make reference to that advisory opinion in your own. But if you need something you can hang your hat on, get your own. Financial disclosure, 2 more slides. We're almost done, Tim. Everyone in here has to file financial disclosure, right? Some people do, some people don't. Some people don't know whether they do. If you don't know, we send you 100 reminders, right? They are due the last Friday in April. This year, that's the 25th, or within 3 months of your appointment to a particular position. Here's why we have financial disclosure. It is not to embarrass, annoy, or offend anyone. I promise you. Financial disclosure helps ensure people acting in the public interest do not use their public positions to further their private financial interests. They help identify conflicts between an official's financial interests and their public office. They increase the overall transparency in government appointments and decision-making, and they help further the public's confidence in government. And what's wrong with that? No one's going to ask you what you paid for your house. No one's going to ask you how much money you have in the bank. Those are not the types of questions. Name any boards for which you are an officer, right? Trying to identify conflicts. Where is your spouse employed? Not what do they make? Things of that nature. I have been asked by Gary Petraka of my office, the investigator who really focuses on financial disclosure, to remind people that you must continue to file financial disclosure in the calendar year after you leave, for 1 calendar year after you leave public office. Thank you for your public service. You could be doing other things your nights and weekends, and here you are, not enough people step up. Thank you for stepping up. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yes, ma'am.
If you have a family member who's part of a group, and I'll give you an example. Both my children are coaches in our school district. Mm-hmm. And you have to make a decision of all the coaches in the school district. Do I have to recuse myself, or should I recuse myself?
It depends. Yeah. Because there is something called the class exception, which can be applicable, right? Maybe. If you are going to take official action that will directly financially impact 2 of your children, it's possible that you will be allowed to participate if your children are part of a class, and I don't mean a class of 3 people, a class that's big enough where if the impact is going to be identical upon everyone in the class, you might be eligible for a class exception. It would really depend on the circumstances and whether everyone will be treated exactly the same way. And there's the number of the class. There's no magic number, but it's like you'll know it when you hear it, that sort of thing. Good question. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
The question is, can somebody like me report what they think is a potential conflict of interest when the example being Scott Abadesian wanted to hire Alan Fung on a sole source basis, and it appeared to be that there might not be any sole source basis for that hire. But that, whether that's a good example or not, who can file an potential ethics complaint?
Anyone. When I said a person who wants an advisory opinion, like in other words, if something were coming up in town and you suspected that the person involved might have a conflict, you can't ask for an advisory opinion on whether someone else can do something. However, if the something has already happened and you suspect that it's a violation of the code, you could file a complaint. Does that make sense?
I don't necessarily know all the details, there's just something that appears to be a potential.
Well, anyone who has a question about a complaint, or if you're considering it, you might just have it. You might want to call the Ethics Commission and speak with an investigator. They do that all the time. And no one's going to tell you don't file or do file, but they'll talk you through maybe parts of the code that may help you make a decision about whether you want to file a complaint. Thank you. Any other questions?
Anybody else?
Some people will say, yeah, I have a question. I prefer not to ask it in front of 100 other people. I'll catch you in the hallway. So I always take my time leaving. My laundry can wait, believe me. Yes?
I was kind of curious because I feel like it was kind of blurred line. Mom, PTO, school member as well. There's things that we, as a parent, are supposed to call businesses to ask for money for the schools to sponsor. Is that an ethics?
If you in your capacity as a school committee member ask a business
/mom.
/mom to contribute,
PTO member, my daughter is in a color fun run, would you like to sponsor?
what's your relationship to the person that you're asking?
It's like Dave's Marketplace.
Oh, so it's not, okay.
But it's usually for a couple $100s. That's why I was wondering if there's a blurred line there.
Oh, is the gift for a private organization?
For the school.
Is that a private organization, though?
No, it's public.
Like a school fundraiser?
It goes to PTO, right.
Yeah. But you're not asking, like, let's say you're the principal in a school and you're not asking the teachers to donate to you buy, wrapping paper from your kids or something like that.
No.
It doesn't sound awful, but if you want to talk more about it, we can. It doesn't sound like a violation.
Right. Because the only way you profit is, kids get, like, gifts for raising so much money. But
I mean, that's a big difference. Let's say you have a child in a dance troupe and they're raising money for a trip to go and perform somewhere. You're not going to ask other people that, your subordinates to contribute to that. But the school is a public thing. Under the Code of Ethics, a state agency or a municipal agency is not considered a business. So the people that work for them are not considered business associates, that sort of thing. Any other questions?
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time.
Okay.
Thank you for taking the time on a Saturday to join us.
Sure.
We're going to do lunch right now.